McButter, everybody. We're serving up the basics for Hearthstone improvement, and as always, I am Doc McButt, joined by my co-host Tito Santana. Tito, how are you doing today?
Doc, I'm fantastic, but stop wasting time on me. We have 2 guests today, so get to them.
So we have returning guest and essentially third host of the show, Dawn. Dawn, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you, as always, for having me on.
It's always a pleasure. And we have a new special guest, Tyleniphe. Tyleniphe, how are you?
I'm doing well. Hi, howdy. Nice to meet all of you. I'd say see ya, but I hate lying, so.
It's funny. Before the show, Doc asked me how to say your name, and I said, I think it's Tyleniphe, how you say it, and I'm always never positive about that, but he's like, okay, Tyler, like he's from New England. And...
Yep, Tyleniphe is right. I get all sorts of different things. Tyleniphe, Tyleniphe. I just usually tell folks, you can call me Ty.
I called you telephony at one point, I think. So what does the name mean before we get on to anything else?
It's actually really funny. It means nothing. I was trying to figure out a unique username, and I am a huge D&D fan. And in particular, elf culture is something that I've always enjoyed, going all the way back to like Lord of the Rings when I was growing up. And so I went to a random name generator, put in all of the parameters for a character, hit roll, and said, oh, that sounds nice.
Well, there you go.
Nice. So, Tyleniphe, what have you been doing inside of Hearthstone?
Yeah, so with the season resetting on August 1st, I started the climb again, trying to find a deck that I both enjoy and that is good. In today's meta, I'm not really sure what that is yet. I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm not a big fan of all of the Zilii or Ziliaxi or however we want to pluralize it, and so I've just been playing a lot of random things. Currently sitting at Diamond 3. I think we're, 3 days in so far? Mostly just playing standard. Not really big into Battlegrounds or Wild, although I dabble in them when I get frustrated with standard. But yeah, that's what I'm doing in the game of Hearthstone. Back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Dawn, how about yourself?
I'm mostly playing my THL matches. I haven't played a ton of ladder because life's been busy. But yeah, THL started this week, so in Hearthstone I've been playing. I'm doing 3 because I'm a crazy woman. 3 episodes. Oh, can you tell I'm tired? 3 different of the leagues in THL. So I'm doing the Pro Series, the Legacy, and Hero, which is Last Hero Standing. So yeah, playing those matches.
Dawn, before you go on, Dawn, I want you to repeat after me. No. Learn how to say no.
Look, I have said no. And then I was like, okay, I see these messages that they needed players. And then I still kind of said no. And then it was like, okay, well, now I see this message that said they're looking for a player of a specific rating just to fill, like, one person to fill that rating spot. And I was like, all right, like, look, I'll be like, basically like last resort, right? Like, okay, obviously if it's gotten to the point where they're using the announcement things to send out that message, they need help. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, if I fit into the team, I'll do it. And then it's like, oh, well, I just checked your rating. You don't fit. And it was like, okay. And then they said, oh, never mind. Now somebody else on the team left. So now there's room for you. So you do fit. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll do it.
See, they asked me to be on Legacy. And I said, well, I'm already in the Pro League. I'm already on the Duos team. I'm going to be doing Concancy Listener Series. I'm trying to find a job. I have streaming and a family and everything. I said, I'm going to say that I have enough on my plate. And I'm happy I did, because I don't know when I would have time for anything else. But anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to know no is okay, Dawn.
No, yeah. Yes. That's... Yes, it's okay to say no. I get it. But But, why say no when you can just pile and stack things high? Like at a buffet. Just, pile your plate up. It'd be fine.
DragonRider is a Hearthstone event hoarder.
Yeah.
Kind of true.
Tito, what have you been doing inside of Hearthstone?
Well, I kind of interrupted Dawn before we get to me. Is there anything else going on besides your THL, Dawn, or you're good? All right, she just had a slice of pizza, so she's like, stop talking to me, I'm good. So, those that remember me, talking last week, I believe this was last week, I had talked about how I kind of killed my rank playing all the new cards and trying the weird stuff, and kind of accepted the fact that I wasn't, up until the set release, I felt like I had an outside chance at 11 stars, because I was playing really well. I was kind of around where, looking at where it might end up, I felt pretty good about it. And then I said, but I can't not play new cards. So I stopped. I didn't play any certain decks because I knew once I started playing them, I'd keep playing them. And I tanked my rank. I went down to 11,578. But then I got serious. And over the last 3 days, I got myself back up to 1,955, I think. I got that 11-star bonus. Boom. At the end. So something I was not expecting it. I just kind of had given up, and then I just started playing really well. And we got there. So I kind of learned a little bit there as far as, it's not over till it's over. And this is my second time. And over the last 5 months, my rank has gotten better each time. And I'm very happy about that. I came in at Legend this month at about 350. We're about 550 right now, and it's still early, but we're planning on doing some really good things, and I'm excited about it. I'm enjoying it. We'll see how the match, the buffs, the nerfs and buffs. Hopefully, we get some buffs too. But the balance changes that come this week. See what changes there. I played my duos match with Pilot. We played against Chewy and Linny, and to my dismay, Chewy did not let Linny bring Hunter. He said, what do you want to bring? She said, Hunter. He said, no. And we ended up losing. We didn't, it was me and Pilot are on the team. We had some pretty bad draws with our Elemental Mage. But also, Chewy is really, really, really good at Hearthstone. And then I am playing DragonRider's team this week. And our match in THL Pro, I won a very tough match against Yegatari. DragonRider beat Pilot in a very, very well-fought match there, too. Both won 5 games. Currently, we're looking like we might edge out the team, so we'll see. But that's what I've been up to. Doc, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I finished last month, which I only started playing standard after the new set came out, and I had a 5-star bonus after quite a few months of not really playing ranked. So I finished at about gold 6, gold 5, which for not touching the game forever, I'm happy with. It's obviously not where I want to be, but I'll take it. And then I mostly played Elemental Mage and Pirate Demon Hunter. So now this month I've been playing so far Elemental Shaman and Pirate Shaman, just to diversify the class of deck I'm playing, even though the archetypes are the same as the other archetypes I've been playing. Just getting used to some of the different choices with some of the other decks in the format right now. It's been fun. I came across a bot or someone intentionally losing, which was unfortunate this morning. So I reported them for both things because they didn't play a single card on turn 5. They just roped every single turn. So that was an interesting game for me. I did stream some Hearthstone a little bit on Friday. So that was also fun. It was a quicker stream because I had some stuff to do. But yeah, Hearthstone's fun. I'm enjoying where the format's at, and I look forward to seeing if I can get into Platinum this month.
I like it, Doc. I'm very excited to see how you do, and I'm looking forward to anything you need help from me. Let me know. It's been nice to see Doc actually streaming. I can't make fun of him for not streaming anymore. But what have you been doing outside of the world of Hearthstone there, Doc?
Yeah, so kind of busy as always. So I've been playing more Baldur's Gate 3. Which is a fantastic game. I'm literally right before getting into actual Baldur's Gate. I think where I'm technically at is Riverton. There's a bunch of NPCs, an absolute bunch. It's fun to listen to all the conversations talk. It feels like you're actually in a medieval fantasy town. So that's been pretty cool. And getting ready to go on vacation. I go to the Redwoods. I leave for the Redwoods on Wednesday. So that's going to be a fun time. I might miss next week depending on when our flight gets back and everything. But I might be there. It's going to be a very, very tentative thing. And then the new set in Magic Gathering came out, which is Bloom Burrow. So it's just a bunch of little woodland creatures. So I've been having a bunch of fun with that. I opened up, I think, a total of 7 packs for it, 7 or 8 packs. And I got one of the commanders I was hoping to pull. And so I made a new deck yesterday. I named it Little Bunny Fufu because the commander is a bunny, and their whole thing is you make any kind of creature token or like a mana token, anything. You can use them to buff the commander. And my whole win con with this is I throw Bunny Fufu at my opponent. So I make him really big and make him damage everybody at the same time. And it's just a lot of fun getting to do some weird janky stuff, and I enjoy it a lot. Dawn, what have you been doing outside of Hearthstone?
I mean, as we kind of alluded to earlier, and we talk about every time, probably a shorter list of things I'm not doing, but been working a bunch, and really been doing school, and been focusing a lot on Amberflake Gaming, which I've been enjoying a lot. I enjoy running the team and hanging with everybody, and I don't know, it's just something that I enjoy a lot. So that's kind of what I've been focusing on.
Nice. Tyleniphe, how about you? What have you been doing outside of Hearthstone?
So I'm a little bit boring. I mostly have been focusing on work. I'm a software engineer by trade, focusing primarily on accessibility, so making sure that folks have equal access to websites, software, mobile applications, kind of the whole gambit, from Swift and Kotlin all the way across to things like JavaScript, HTML, CSS, etc. That's been taking up a lot of time. Other than that, spending a lot of time with my puppy. She's about a year old now, and is rambunctious. She's a little terrier mix of some kind, and definitely a terror. And watching a lot of Olympics. I'm a huge tennis fan, so following both the men's and women's tennis through the Olympics has been a lot of fun. But other than that, just mostly trying to catch my breath and relax, and yeah.
Awesome. Tito, how about yourself?
Well, so normally I normally don't have a lot going on, right? Normally it's like, hey, I've been doing some gardening, looking for work, blah blah blah. Last week, so I've been trying to get into the content thing, especially after the theory crafting. I'm like, hey, I got a big boost in every place, so let's take advantage of it. So I've been doing a little bit of things. So on Thursday, I said, you know what? I'm going to take a couple small shorts that were on TikTok and put them over to that didn't do that well on TikTok. They did okay, and bring them over to shorts on YouTube. And I had also made a little bit of other content that day and stuff and threw it out there. I had more views on Thursday on YouTube than I had in the previous 365 days combined. So that was a lot of fun. It was exciting. I was like, all of a sudden, I'm like, I couldn't stop watching like the little statistics that pop up and like watching like, hey, this one short's doing pretty well, and then all of a sudden this other short that wasn't doing as well, kind of jumping above it and things. And I also posted, by the way, if you're listening to this, you've already listened to this, so you know how to find us. But I also took both my podcasts and I put them on YouTube as far as podcasting goes, so they're now attached to the RSS feed. So it's weird because with the Talking Hearthstone podcast, I already make a video recording and then I post that, but now I also have the audio recording that gets posted because of the RSS feed, so it's there twice. I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing, or it doesn't really matter. But also every episode of Bread and Butter now is on YouTube, so people can find it. I don't know how much difference it'll make, but already some people are looking for it. Then some episodes have really kind of people have found really fast, so I don't know how all that works, but we're planning on just kind of ramping up and doing this stuff a little bit more, so I'm very excited. People don't want to hear about that anymore, Doc. They want to know who Tyleniphe is. They want to know what makes him tick. So why don't we talk about him a little bit and ask him some questions.
So Tyleniphe, for listeners that don't know, you're blind And have you been blind all your life, or was this something that had progressed throughout your life?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So, I lost my sight 23 years ago when I was 6 years old. I had a condition called hydrocephalus. Basically, what that is it's fluid that builds up on your brain. Typically, the fluid on your brain drains through what's called ventricles. It's like tubes, basically. But my ventricles were sealed by a brain tumor on my brainstem. And what happened was because the fluid couldn't drain, that fluid built up on my optic nerves and on the frontal cortex. And it was really interesting. My mom at the time, she was a single mom of two, and she grew up in the South, and we were very traditional in the sense that, you know, we use yes ma'am, no sir, please, thank you. And she noticed that I started acting very oddly. There's a lot more disrespect, or as I jokingly say, age appropriate 6-year-old behavior. And she decided to take me in one day because I couldn't find my shoes, and they were literally right in front of me. But I kept insisting, like, I can't see them, I can't see them. And they did an emergency CAT scan, and they came out and they said, hey, you only have two choices. Either your son can die, or he can have emergency surgery now. Obviously, she chose the surgery because I'm here. Yeah, that's how I lost my sight.
So how did you get started with gaming?
Yeah, that's really a great question. So, when I was 5, I was very fortunate to get a Nintendo 64. And I had a really good friend who we're still friends today, actually. We became friends when I was 4 and he was 5. And we used to play games like Pokemon Snap and Pokemon Stadium. And when I lost my sight and I woke up from surgery, the first two things that I said was, one, I want Vienna sausage. And secondly, interestingly enough, I was wondering, like, how am I going to play video games? And my best friend at the time thought, like, hey, like, there's no reason you couldn't. I'll just help you. And so, like, part of it was exploration in how we could figure out how to make it work. It started with learning the in-game sound effects for things like Super Smash Brothers and Mario Party, and sort of secondhand gaming in a lot of ways, him telling me where to go. And then it transitioned to figuring out ways that we could be independent and play collaboratively together, instead of relying simply on him telling me where to go. And that really got its start with Diablo 2 and World of Warcraft back in 2003 or 4, somewhere in there. But I've been an avid gamer ever since. And I've only gotten better, I think.
Heck yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So how did you find Super Blind Guy? And how did it get you into wanting to get more into accessibility for games? And how did you find Hearthstone? I know that's a bunch.
Yeah, so I'll take it one question at a time. How did I find Super Blind Man Brandon Cole? It's actually really funny. So I got into the accessibility field when I was 14. So it's 15 years ago now. At that time, I was primarily focused in software and web development. I was still kind of under the impression that, like, although blind people could play video games, it wasn't as if we were living in the world or experiencing the games. It was more of like, as I'm interacting with it, you're telling me where to go, and like my agency doesn't actually exist. LOL agency. And so I thought that, like, for me, like, career-wise, it made more sense to pursue software and web development because it was something that I was super passionate about and had a lot of interest in. In 2017, I was reading some articles in the industry, and I came across this guy who was saying that just wait, The Last of Us Part 2 is going to be mind blowing. It's going to be fully accessible. Blind people will be able to play it from end to end, no questions asked. And I remember thinking at that time, like, that doesn't seem feasible. How do you manipulate the camera such that the horizontal and the vertical are properly situated? How is a user supposed to, place the shot on the zombies such that the zombies go down immediately? How do you pick up all of the gear on the ground that you need in order to ensure that your inventory is stocked so you can continue to do the things that are necessary in a game like The Last of Us? And so there's a lot of skepticism there, but I reached out to Brandon on Twitter at the time, just out of, I guess, morbid curiosity. At that point, I'd lost a lot of hope in terms of blind people being able to integrate into the game development side of things. There was games that you could play like Soul Calibur and Mortal Kombat and Killer Instinct. But if you notice, all of those have one thing in common. They're all fighting games. And although fighting games are interesting, and I think they're a lot of fun, they lack a degree of complexity for me along the cognitive spectrum that it causes them to lose a lot of interest. Like there's high skill threshold in fighting games. Like I don't want it to come across as if I'm saying, if you play fighting games and you're a plebe. That's not true. I think that there is a tremendous amount of skill, and I'm terrible at them. But I wanted to be able to experience, Sanctuary and Azeroth, and be able to race on the tracks of Forza, and I didn't think it was possible. And I remember talking with Brandon and really starting to have my eyes opened, pun intended, to really what the possibilities were. He argued that just like with web development, design is the problem. With the technology we have today, if design is such that we imagine a future in which barriers do not exist, then it can happen. When we have an accessibility in games or within the web, it's not the technology that's failed, it's us as designers and as developers. And that really stuck with me. In 2020, I was browsing through Twitter, and I came across a post from Blizzard that was looking at a new game that was in development, and they were seeking accessibility feedback. Messaging around it was, hey, if you're interested, we really want people with disabilities to come do this playtest and maybe give some advice. And it was for this little known franchise called Diablo. And I remember when I was, 7-8 years old, sitting and my friend is reading all of the text during Diablo 2 and helping me understand what's going on as we run around and kill Bloodraven and Bale and Diablo and Mephisto. And I thought to myself, like, man, if we can make games like The Last of Us Parts 1 and 2 fully accessible, why can't we make Diablo accessible? Like, that should be a thing. It's an isometric top-down ARPG. It shouldn't be that hard. It's just a lot of text, and sure, you do have to, dodge things and kill things, but at the end of the day, it boils down to ones and zeros, so, like, why not? And so I was very fortunate to be invited to participate in a variety of different activities. And eventually it turned into what we have today, which is, in my opinion, a fully functional Diablo game that only continues to get better each and every patch. And they patch pretty regularly. It's like every 3 weeks or so. I can talk for days on Diablo. But to kind of give you an idea, when we talk about what does equity look like, one of the things that I go back to is like peak agency and ensuring that people with disabilities can play the same game, not a different game, not an easier game, but the same game as our able-bodied peers. And in Season 2, I was ranked number 4 in the world on the Rogue class, which to me goes to show that like the Diablo team really succeeded in doing it. It wasn't number 4 blind, it was number 4 blind or sighted, so that was pretty cool. Hearthstone, actually really funny. So the Hearthstone Access mod, which is how blind people play Hearthstone, it is essentially a way that exposes all of the text UI to screen reading technology. Was developed several years ago by a blind person who wanted to play Hearthstone, and the blind community is very large in the Hearthstone community. And I remember when it first rolled out, Brandon reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, Tyleniphe, you should definitely try Hearthstone. It's another game that is accessible and it's mainstream and it's a lot of fun." And I remember thinking to myself, yeah, but I play Flesh and Blood and Magic and Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! So yeah, no, Hearthstone sounds like hot garbage. And I was kind of an arrogant jerk about it, to be honest. In December of 2023, I was significantly burned out from playing Diablo 4. By that point, the game had been out for 6 months, and I had already dumped in about 4,000 hours into the game. Part of being the best is putting in way too much time. And being blind, I had to put in twice as much time in order to be as competitive. It's just how it works. I had to, memorize all of the maps and really understand the sound engineering. And I was tired. I was really tired. And so I reached out to Brandon and I said, "Okay, I'm ready. I want to try this Hearthstone game. Is it something worth pursuing still? Is it still fun?" And Brandon was very kind. He sent me a Dropbox link with the auto patcher and said, "I actually stored this for you years ago." And Brandon offered me advice on various decks that I should build, and he was very proud. He had every card from every expansion up to that point. And he said, "If there's anything you want to build, send me a message and I will build it for you and you can test it out to see if you enjoy it." And it's actually funny. I played it for 2 days, January 1st and 2nd, and dumped in way too much money into the game. And my bank account decided it was fraud. And so I was banned for 2 weeks because they resent the charges.
Oh, no.
And I reached out to Ridiculous Hat, and was like, "Yo, what a welcome. I give y'all money and you ban me. What's going on here?" And Hat was very kind and patient and worked with me through the ticketing process with the customer service team. And on January 15th, I got access again and made it to Diamond 7 and instantly hated my life. I was like, "Oh, I suck at this game. I'm so bad." But yeah, that's how I found Hearthstone. I think that's all the questions.
Yeah, no, it's interesting when you say that. It's like, I think about games like Hearthstone, which to me seems like if you can have accessibility to it, like that's a game that anyone can play, kind of like chess or whatnot. But like to think you're going to put a blind person behind the wheel of a car in a game, that just is nutty to me. How does that work?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. So one of the last things that Brandon did before, unfortunately, he passed away about a month ago, was to work with the studio at Microsoft that develops Forza Motorsports, and they made that game fully accessible, so blind people can play it unassisted. And part of what it is like working on creating unique sound effects to let the user know, hey, you have a left-hand turn coming up. You need to make the left-hand turn now, but you can't use things like words to communicate that because that would be way too slow. And so it's trying to figure out, like, how do I communicate using sound effects or ear cons to notify the user, like, this is the action that you need to take immediately. And so there's, like, I don't even know. There's a huge library of various sounds within Forza to let the user know, hey, this is, you're going the wrong way, or you need to make a left-hand turn, or there's a gentle right-hand turn coming up, but it's not a sharp turn, or, hey, there's another object in the way. And then there are other things that come into play as well, like the way I explain it is you have explicit accessibility settings, so, like, here are the settings that are actually in the game. And then you have implicit accessibility settings, so things that developers have done by accident. Diablo is really good at the accidental accessibility, always has been. And Forza does it to a degree as well. So one of the things that they've done is through environmental cues, you can actually pick up on a variety of different things. So when you're listening to the other cars around you in Forza, you can actually hear, like, where the openings are based on how the wind is blowing against the cars, or being able to pick up on various echoes that are occurring in a game like Diablo can tell you, hey, there's open space here, or I need to go this direction in order to find the doorway. Little things like that help. And then the other thing that Forza has that's very good is haptic feedback for a variety of different aspects. So your controller will vibrate with different degrees of intensity and in different parts of the controller to indicate sort of where objects are within the game itself. And then the other piece, of course, is really cognitively mapping, building a mental picture of what is on screen in your head, which sounds daunting when you haven't actually seen it. And it is, but it's not at the same time, because we're constantly doing that in the world itself as it is. When I walk out the front door and I go across town, I'm, feeling where the sun is in the sky. It's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun is to my right. I know that the sun is usually at the southernmost point, so therefore south is to my right. I hear traffic up ahead. I know that there's a street crossing coming up. Oh, hey, look, there's a trash can here. Let me make note of that in my head, that when I find a trash can based on the time and distance that I've traveled, then I know kind of where I'm at there as well. And so you take a lot of the skills that you use in the real world and apply that to how you interact with video games as well, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you were recognized on stage at BlizzCon for achievements in Diablo 4. How did that feel?
Quite honestly, I was in shock. I'd always dreamed since I was a kid that I too would be able to be welcomed in hell. To be able to travel to Sanctuary and to be a part of stopping the what the Warcraft community would call the Legion, the demons that are invading. And I never thought that it would be reality. When Diablo 4 released, I was very determined. I wanted to prove that blind people could. A lot of what I had been hearing in the community, trying to interact with other streamers and other content creators was like, there's no way like a blind person could do X, Y, and Z. And so I set a lot of goals for myself to prove that we too could be competitive, and secondarily that the game in its current state was fully playable from end to end. And so I did that. I was the world's first totally blind person to clear the campaign. It took me 5 days to do so. I went on to hit level 100 in hardcore, which no blind person has done since. A lot of sighted people can't do it. hardcore basically is a mode where if you die, your character dies forever. You don't get any second chances. So there's a lot of... Sorry,
No, you're okay.
some water. There's a lot of balancing various skill expression, but also, monitoring your resources, really understanding how mathematically all of the different skills interact, and balancing all of that out while not dying. It's a little bit challenging. I also completed all of the Uber content, or like the penultimate bosses, without any sighted help for all of it. And so Blizzard had reached out and they said, we think it would be really cool if we used a clip from when you took out Uber Lilith, which is like the penultimate boss in the game. That at the time, less than 1% of the player base had killed. And they wanted to use it as a part of like a montage to show their commitment to inclusivity. And at the time I didn't really think about it. I was just like, yeah, sure, like that's fine, whatever. It gets the message out there for other blind folks who may be watching BlizzCon, or it also will demonstrate to other content creators that I really look up to, folks like Woody Joe and Ranterax and Macro Bio Boy and Snuggy and all of those who had like, I was in their chats and being annoying as I always am. But I wanted to show them that like, hey, I'm here, I exist, and I am on your level. I did not know that the the game manager, Rod Ferguson, was going to literally not just show the montage, but like as a part of opening ceremonies. Like he spent like a minute and a half on his speech acknowledging the fact that like we blind people do belong in Sanctuary, and that accessibility, it's not a destination. Like the biggest misconception a lot of folks have is like, hey, once we're accessible, we're done, dust hands. But the reality is, like with any other type of agile development, it never ends. It's a journey, and Rod came out and literally said, Blizzard recognizes that like our commitment to disability doesn't stop here. We understand that we're not done and that it is a journey, and we ask for your patience. And to me, like that there as a part of opening ceremonies was like the first time that a studio, in my opinion, really made it clear that like we belong. And I was shocked. I literally did not know it was coming. I was watching it. I was co-streaming BlizzCon, and I literally started crying on stream because I was just like, oh my god, like that's me. And then I had to think about it. I was like, wait, what just happened here? It was cool. I appreciate that team, the Diablo 4 team, and in particular, the lead accessibility designer Drew McCrory, for all of the work that they've done. An absolutely brilliant legend in the accessibility field, honestly.
That was incredible. Thank you. So when you stream as a blind person, you have to think about the game. You also have your accessibility software talking to you and your chat interface talking, as well as the general distractions with streaming. How do you do it and keep your sanity?
That's a really great question. The question is, do I keep my sanity? No. So part of it is that, I've been relying on text to speech for a very long time. And so part of it is like my brain is used to processing a high degree of information. When I'm doing software development, for example, I listen to my screen reader at approximately 980 words a minute. Which, to kind of put that into perspective, if you were to listen to like Bill Clinton's inaugural address back in the 90s, he spoke at approximately 125 words a minute. So 980 is very fast. And so part of the benefit to that is that I'm able to synthesize and fragment all of the text that's going on, so as you mentioned, I have my screen reader reading out. Let's use Hearthstone as the example. I have my screen reader reading out, all of the cards that are in play. I have a separate TTS for chat that is telling me, hey Ty, you suck at this game, or why aren't you playing Diablo? I get that one all the time. Or a variety of different things, and then I also have music going on as well, because I recognize that like when people are hanging out, like they're there for me, but they also want to be a part of an experience. They just they don't necessarily want to just watch me play video games. They want to hang out, vibe, be a part of a community. And so I have that going, and with a game like Hearthstone, there's a lot of thinking through, like, okay, I'm going to play this card in this situation, or I need to play this card here, or they might have that card, so let's not play this card. Let's hold that for now. And then, calculating things. And I'm not the best at it, to be quite honest. I make a lot of mistakes when I'm streaming that I don't make when I'm not streaming. And part of it is that a joke, a good friend of mine now, Ron Mexico, who's been on this podcast quite a bit, he once told me during a coaching session that counting is for nerds or people who want to win. Thankfully, I'm a nerd, and I do want to win, so I do try to count, but sometimes, more often than not, I usually miscount, and I'm one off lethal when I could have had it. But yeah, I mean, long story short, it's like with any skill that you develop over time, practice, practice, practice. And I'm not gonna lie, like having ADHD on top of being blind, like it is challenging to keep it all fixed in my head all at once. That's the beauty of streaming, is that like nobody expects you to be perfect. They want you to be your authentic self, and being authentic means making mistakes because we're human. And so like if you're always playing flawlessly, then you're no longer relatable. And I think that really damages people's perceptions of, how do they engage with the other or that person that is no longer like them, right? I think that answers the question, maybe.
I don't know. I think Pocket Train did fine by not making random mistakes. But no, but like what you were saying, as far as playing worse on stream versus not on stream, that's not unique to you not being able to see. That is just standard par for the course as a streamer.
Now, I will say I've been very fortunate that some folks in the community have let me add them so I can spectate and follow along while they're streaming. Pocket is one of those, and yeah. I can say that I have seen Pocket make mistakes. So now I would never call Pocket out. Pocket, if you're listening to this, I didn't see you make mistakes. He's been
on the show. He doesn't listen. He's been on the show. He's not listening.
But yeah, I mean, everybody makes mistakes, and that's part of playing Hearthstone.
So is there a game that you really want to play, but unfortunately the accessibility just isn't there yet?
Elden Ring. I think that for me, I love a challenge. I've heard from lots and lots of people that the Souls-like games are difficult. I've been tempted to try them anyway, even though there is 0 accessibility settings in them. Because I've also heard that there are content creators who put on a blindfold and they play through the game. And so part of me says, well, if a sighted person can just slap on a blindfold and do it, then why can't I? The question really, though, becomes, do I have the patience? And the answer is no. But yeah, I would love to play Elden Ring.
The interesting thing you say about that is, as you're talking about the things, I wonder, like, I know some people play chess blindfolded, right? Because they have to picture like the things in their brain, or they can just play just from their brain. I wonder if, as someone with sight, if I was to try to like use your software and to play Hearthstone without being able to see what I'm doing and having to have that mental picture and keep track of everything. I wonder if that would make me as a Hearthstone player even better, just to, have to be aware of everything more than just kind of relying on my one, my ability to see.
So I think so. And the reason I think so is not necessarily about the blindness engagement bit, but the other crutches that we have available to us, that in of themselves are a form of accessibility. What I mean by that is deck trackers, right? A lot of people rely on deck trackers to help them in the decisioning making process, which drops the cognitive load that's involved for folks to be able to play the game. That's very good, very helpful, but they're also completely inaccessible. Blind people don't have access to them. And so it forces you to remember from game to game, when I chose this card in my mulligan, it worked, whereas it didn't in this case. We also don't have access to the statistical resources like HS Replay or HS Guru. So a lot of it is trial and error. And I think that part of it allows us to more intimately know cards and the interactions as a result. Y'all have watched lots of Hearthstone streamers, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have. And too often, when folks are talking through their plays, they'll say, that one card, the 2-drop that's a 3/2. Okay, well, what is that card? How does it interact with other cards in the deck? Well, I don't know. I just know it because, I see it and I play it. Whereas with a lot of blind folks, because we're forced to interact with the card in its totality, we, can say, the 1-drop gift wrap whelp gives 1/1. If you're holding another dragon in your hand, it turns from a 2/1 into a 3/2. I know that Splish Splash Whelp at as a 3-drop has 3 attack, 2 health. If you have another dragon in hand, you'll get 1 empty mana crystal. And so on and so forth for the entirety of the collection. Does that make me a better Hearthstone player? I don't think so. But I do think that it allows me to really lean into the fundamentals, which I think is where the biggest growth opportunity exists for a lot of folks. It turns out the complex concepts, although important, are not necessarily hard to understand. The fundamentals, though, incredibly important, really hard to get.
So, what is something that unimpaired people can do to make the space more inviting and friendly for impaired people?
Yeah, that's a really great question. There's sort of 2 things that jump out immediately to me. And this is mostly for our content creators. One, when you post images on social media, we all do it. It's a part of marketing, getting your message out there. I've got this funny board state, or look at this thing I did, or here's a meme, everybody LOL, and please follow me. Include alt text. Alt text is essentially a description of what is contained in that image. The best alt text contains what the author is trying to convey. When I'm working with engineers, I oftentimes will tell them, treat alt text like a traditional tweet back in the day. Can't believe I have to say that now. I feel old. 150 characters or less. What is in your image? What are you trying to convey to the user? When you include a description or an alt attribute containing that information, it exposes what is contained in that image to screen reader users, so then they can engage with that content. The second part is really focusing on how you're communicating during your streams or as you're talking through what happened in a game. So what I emphasize a lot is how is your sound balance? If you're blaring music and your game volume is at 0, most blind people are not going to be able to follow along. They can't see your screen. All they're hearing is your music or your chatters, and so they have no idea what's going on in the game. Similarly, if you aren't providing any play-by-play analysis, the user is not going to be able, a blind person is not going to be able to engage with what's going on. Now, that's not to say that you have to say literally every single thing, right? So, some folks might think, okay, I drew a gift wrap whelp. I'm going to play out my Chia Drake. It's going to draw a spell. Oh, look, I got swipe. Now I'm going to play the gift wrap whelp, and now I'm going to play the Chia Drake, and now I'm going to play the concierge, and now I'm going to play out all of my sea breeze chalices. Okay, now they have played a Grifta. They've picked the center discover card that's on the left side of their hand. They play out another thing, and so on. Like, that's a lot of information, and it also makes the streamer very tired and cranky. It's non-sustainable. And so what I usually advise folks is, like, how can we give the essential information in conjunction with what is already available? So, maybe if your sound volume's up high enough, the battle cry, well, not battle cry, that's a bad word for Hearthstone because battle cries are a thing. The animation of the card that you play might indicate, like, hey, I played this card. If it's not obvious, or if there's a lot of things going on all at once, maybe you drop in, here are the discover options available. This is sort of what I'm thinking as I'm playing. How did you make that decision to play the Chia Drake instead of the gift wrap whelp in this instance? Well, I played the Chia Drake first because I had only 2 dragons in hand, and I wanted to provide that 1/1 buff to the 1/1 Chia Drake, so that way, eventually, when I played the 1/1 Chia Drake, it's now a 2/2, and it's a little bit more uncomfortable for my opponent to clear. If that makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just picturing somebody trying to, and obviously, I try to, if you're coming into somebody's stream and they are not that descriptive, but you want to hear what they say, if, like for me, if someone says, hey, I am hearing impaired, I try, like, I know if when Ty comes in, I already know he doesn't have to tell me he's visually impaired. I already know he's visually impaired. So when I see Ty come in, I do try to be a little bit more descriptive, because sometimes it's very easy as a streamer because you just rely on what you're doing. But I'm just picturing now, after you explained all that and how to not to say everything, I'm picturing somebody trying to cast a game that they're playing when they're trying to play APM Pirates and Battleground.
Yeah, it's very challenging. A really good example in Standard, right, is when folks play Excavate Rogue. You have so many decisions that are happening all the time. And so it's also on the blind person to be patient and to understand, like, not everything is going to be communicated, and that's okay. Ron Mexico is really, really good at explaining when he can how decisions were made during his opponent's turn. He does it during his turn when he can, but sometimes, in those high APM moments, providing that explanation during the opponent's turn when that time is, clicking down, and then after the game has ended, sort of walking through the highlights. Here was the mistake that I made. Here's what I could have done differently. This is why I did what I did. This is why I should have done what I could have done. The other thing, though, too, is, like, sometimes I show up to streams just to hang out. Like, I don't necessarily care what's going on in the game itself. And that's okay, too. So I think, like, part of it is relying on that blind person to communicate their needs and wants. Maybe they ask, like, hey, can I add you so I can spectate? And, being open to that idea. I know in the Hearthstone community, some folks get a little bit weirded out by just adding all the randos. In the Diablo 4 community, it's a little bit different because we add everybody and anybody to party up and to complete content and that sort of thing. But I think it also fosters a degree of community building when we are open to letting folks spectate or add us and those sorts of things. It is a really good point there, Tito, and that is that it is hard sometimes when you have those high complex decisioning trees that you have to navigate, and like what does good look like in terms of communicating that.
Agreed. And I just think that too, like, I don't necessarily, I think one important thing is if you do have an impairment of some kind and it does affect how you are consuming that content and you would like to engage more with that streamer, let them know. Like, some might be responsive, some not. That'll tell you something about that person probably. But if they don't know you're visually impaired or some other impairment, then how can they accommodate, right? So I hope that if you are impaired, that you aren't shy about letting someone know, so they can actually get to know part of their communities like that, and they can you're like I said, when you stop into my stream, I don't know if you noticed, but I do try to start being a little bit more explanative than I might have been currently if I was kind of like, just kind of going through the motions.
I do, and I appreciate it. And that is a really good point that I really want to emphasize, and that is people don't know what they don't know, right? Across my entire lifespan of being blind, and in my career, working at a lot of major companies, a lot of them are common household names, so you probably know some of them. I think I've only ever met one person who said, nah, screw blind people, I don't really care. Most people want to be inclusive. And so, like, part of what we have to do is be open to education, and helping folks understand, like, hey, this is what is problematic, and this is how, we can resolve it. So, it's a learning curve, or opportunity for both people involved. And you're not going to get it right on the first try, and that's okay. But I do appreciate you, Tito, because, very much a noticeable effort every time I stop in your stream.
And I think it's Eminem on his most recent album said "screw blind people," but I don't think he's being serious, so I wouldn't take that too personally.
I think just to like kind of piggyback off that a little bit too, I think there's a lot of things that you're talking about that a good way to even start trying to think about some of these things is you're not only helping people who have disabilities or, something else, right? Like, you're also helping other people. Like, one reason why I cast the way that I cast and I try to relay that information, hey, this card just got burned, because it's a generic sound effect. There's no way other than looking at it to know what the card was that was burned, for example, But maybe somebody is in their kitchen cooking and just listening to the stream. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, there's so many people who are like, I'm going to make dinner and just like listen to the stream while I'm cooking, or like, I'm going to do some housework or something. Or I've done this where like I'll just put a stream on while I'm driving home from the grocery store. And I'm not watching the stream, but I'm just listening to it. And so when people are more communicative, well, okay, I'm not even going to try to say that. When they're more descriptive and they're saying more things, right, then I can understand that, even though I'm not blind, but I'm doing something else while I'm listening to the stream. So all of that helps more people and just widens your audience and the people that you're reaching to, not only just helping people who, might be blind. So it's like being inclusive helps more people than just the people that you're initially seeking to be inclusive for.
I'm going to say to Deck Tech, because I think he's the only possible dev that might actually listen to this show. I think what Dawn just said is we need individual sounds for cards when they get burned. So unique sounds if that card get burned.
Oh my gosh,
that'd be easy, right?
So crazy.
But
that would be ridiculous.
The entire reason I started streaming, aside from it was past COVID, I like to talk, and I have bowling. I need social interaction. Is that I wanted to play slower and I wanted to talk through my plays. So not only are you helping Dawn driving on her way to get groceries, and not only helping Ty, you can't see what you're doing. The more you talk through your stuff, you're helping yourself, because it is very easy to go click, 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 done. But if you're like, okay, I could play the Tigress plushie, then swing, then play the other plushie, but if I do it in that order, I then don't kill this guy, and it helps you to think more as you're playing. So Sometimes you ever have a problem that you're trying to solve? Like Ty, you're a developer. You're trying to solve. You're sitting there and you're like, I can't figure out the solution. And you go, hey Doc, I'm trying to write this and I'm trying to do that, but then I do this and that and the other. Okay, and then you never mind, Doc, I figured it out. As soon as you start vocalizing it, it's like it's what is it called? The teddy bear syndrome or something like that. I forget what it's called. It's like basically as soon as you start talking about it, it doesn't have to be someone there. It's a different thing than thinking about it in your head. So talking out, not only is it going to be more engaging for your community, if you're a streamer, but also it just helps you think through the things yourself. Rubber duck. That's it, rubber ducking.
Yep, rubber ducky.
I knew it was something like that, teddy bear, whatever.
So, Ty, you were good friends with Brandon. Is there anything you'd like to say to him?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I would say thank you. I'm pretty open about it. I struggle with depression and anxiety. It's pretty significant, to be quite honest. And Hearthstone in particular has been a way for me to escape from a lot of the stuff that's happening IRL. And to be able to find sanctuary in my own thoughts. And I wouldn't have that if Brandon hadn't stayed persistent in trying to convince me that Hearthstone was not just a community, but a family that was worth investing in. Brandon was also incredibly instrumental in broadening my horizons when it came to my career. I've been very fortunate in my career to work for large companies. I gave a presentation to the United Nations on artificial intelligence and machine learning. But even still, there was this degree of internalized ableism that existed where I didn't really understand what was possible for people with disabilities. And Brandon's commitment to the concept of nothing about us without us, which is a very popular disability mantra. Basically saying that like when we have things that deal with the disabled community, we should be at the center of it. Nobody is an expert in our experience like we are. And he once told me, he said, it's not about those of us who are perceived as hardcore gamers or elite gamers. We want every single person. Maybe they're newly blind or they were overseas and had an accident, and they've suddenly don't have access to the ability to use their hands anymore. We want every single person to be able to sit at the table and to play games. Like those are the people that we should be designing for. Those concepts really have helped me be a better person in both my advocacy as well as in my career. And so many thanks to Brandon from the bottom of my heart, not just for helping me stay focused and keeping me on my path as an engineer and as a person, but also legitimately saving my life, honestly.
So, Ty, what's your favorite deck of all time?
So honestly, I love Earthen Paladin. I tried so hard during theory crafting to get an Earthen Paladin deck to work. It doesn't quite hit the same as when we had Garden's Grace. But the concept of I make this little tiny earthen golem, and then next thing I know, the next one that comes out is slightly bigger, and then slightly bigger, and then all of a sudden I've got a board full of an 18-18, a 16-16, a 14-14, 12-12. Now what? Deal with it. That makes me so happy. So I really enjoy Earthen Paladin, but I also there's two other decks that are equally as important to me for different reasons. One is Excavate Rogue, which I know a lot of folks are not super thrilled with, because there for a little while it was very popular, particularly at Top Legend. But like the idea of like the variety of different decisioning that happens. My major in my undergrad was in philosophy. In particular, I focused on modal logic, modal metaphysics, and epistemology. The idea of theory of knowledge, as well as computational logic, and how language is constructed. And so when I play Rogue, it kind of takes me back to like the good old days of like thinking through puzzles and figuring out, okay, if I pick this card, what are the implications? And having to think very quickly through all of those is very fun. And I also really love Control Priest. It started as a meme, honestly. Like I was like, okay, what does everybody hate? All right, it looks like it's Control Priest. Can I find something? And Clark Hellscream posted a Control Priest video near the midpoint of Badlands, and it was awful. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And so I keep returning to this idea of like, hey, maybe I can make Control Priest good. Nope, not today. It's still not good. Well, let me drop into Sidisi and into Ron's streams and tell them how I'm so happy that I can play Hunter cards in my Control Priest now. It's fun, not because the deck itself is good, or that it's particularly fun to play, but because it allows me to be a part of the community and to have like those jokes, to be able to engage with people that I admire as content creators. And to just have a good time. And so I would say those three are probably tied for me.
I'm sorry, but Ty will no longer be welcome on the show after today. First he's talking all about Concierge Druid, now Control Priest. Thank you, but obviously kidding. And also, sorry everybody, I know we had Dawn on to also talk about a topic, but we are clearly out of time, so we'll have... Thank you, Ty. That was great to get to know you. I appreciate that. But Dawn, we have some topics here to talk about. Why don't we get into that? So what's our topic for today?
Yeah, so the topic today is what I'm dubbing as managing metas. And first, what I want to ask the three of you is, do you feel like you play better when the meta is more like stale and quote unquote like solved? Or do you play better when it is a like new meta and people are trying all sorts of things, like when new expansion come out, or like right after a patch when people are trying different things? Tito, let's start with you.
I love a solved meta. I love knowing kind of what to be good against, what to not be good against, how to know that, hey, this is a deck I have a disadvantage against with what I'm playing, so how can I find those edges? Or this is a deck I know I'm really strong about, and how to maybe be a little bit more aggressive here, or a little more passive there, and whatnot. I love that kind of that puzzle. That it's already the puzzle is there still, but I have more concrete pieces to work with. So I do love a solved meta.
Okay.
I'm the same actually. I love knowing like what's out there, what I'm going to face. Because then you can get into like the nitty gritty nuanced decisions that exist from like knowing you're going to run into specific matchups. I wish the meta was closer, but a deck that I was very confident in was Shockspitter Hunter. Like knowing like, okay, if I'm playing like the Mirror, or if I'm playing what other deck, like I knew exactly like what I needed to mulligan for. And then I knew the breakpoints really well. I knew like, okay, if they're playing this, then I can like mulligan for this other card. Sorry, I don't remember specifics. It's just been a very long time since that's meta existed. But that was just a deck that I felt very competent in and just enjoyed the small decisions I got to make that ended up mattering so much more in the later parts of the game. So when there's something that is like solved and I can sit there and make all these small decisions that will impact the game greater than it would in like I don't know what I'm going to play against. It's just going to be like, I can curve out maybe, and like that could work. Making those small decisions to have greater impact is something that I really enjoy.
Awesome. And Ty, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna buck the trend. I really like a solved meta. But in part, it's because I think that the wackiness also instills a degree of toxicity. Very early on in the meta, we sort of have two things, right? We have high degrees of aggro, and we also have 101 unkilliacs. And I hate unkilliacs. But as the meta, begins to solidify, then people start to figure out, okay, this is how I build against this thing that has proven to be somewhat toxic, and it reduces it back towards the average, if that makes sense.
And to piggyback on that, the reason why I mentioned how I had this nice little 3-day window where I climbed myself back into relevance this last month, Zilliax. Well, playing Zilliax, you know what Zilliax hates? Sir Finley. So finding the right deck to combat that in that wasn't solved meta, but like it was prevalent meta, made it a lot easier to climb whenever time you saw a Zilliax. I don't know, you transformed it and they can't bring it back with Hydration Station or Dr. Boom or Adventure Boom, whatever his name is. And yeah, how about yourself, Don? Do you like the new meta or the solved meta?
I'm surprised that all of us like a more solved meta, because I've also very much been like that way. I feel like I play better in those metas. I usually enjoy them more, because I am very much like you said, Doc, like the little like nuanced plays, the like, okay, I know, like I've been playing this deck. I know like this deck really well, like inside and out. And then you can really get down to like, okay, obviously I've worked through how to play the deck. I've worked through how to play like specific matchups. And now it's like, okay, now in this matchup, this odd thing that like doesn't usually happen in this matchup has happened. And now you get to figure out like how you're doing that. That's just something I very much enjoy. So the reason I ask is because this is kind of the topic of this managing metas is I kind of wanted to look at like the pros and cons or like strengths and weaknesses of, either those kind of solved metas or the more like fresh new metas. And some people do enjoy new metas more. They kind of get tired of the same old stuff. And so they don't enjoy those more like stale solved metas as much. So I would say, for one thing, people who tend to do better in like new metas either are very, very good at like the big picture, quote unquote, like Hearthstone basics, I'd say. So they're going to be very good at knowing, okay, I need to just play for tempo, right? Oh, okay. They can recognize very quickly when they might be ahead or behind, or when they have to make a big push. Like, you know what? I just have to go for certain plays because my opponent might be running removal or whatever, and they just kind of have to go for it. So they're going to typically be a little bit faster at identifying those kind of things than I think people who are better in the slower metas, or like more solved metas that have been around longer. But on the other side, I feel like people who tend to do better in those more solved metas, the more stale metas, generally are very, very good at like that pattern recognition, right? They're like, okay, I recognize that it's going to, go, I play this, my opponent plays that, I play this, my opponent plays that, I play this, my opponent plays that, and then boom, game over. Like they can recognize that. They're very good at that. And it might take them a little while to get to that point, but those are kind of the biggest distinctions, I think, that separate people who are generally better in one meta versus the other. Now, the downside, or kind of one of the cons of a newer meta, is people who tend to do better in slower metas really struggle in newer metas because things are constantly changing, right? They're changing too quickly for those people to kind of recognize the patterns, or there's too many different decks being played and they can't kind of get a grasp on the matchup specifically. They might be better at recognizing like certain matchups and learning matchups. And when there's a lot of change, like the first couple of days after an expansion, right? That time there's usually a lot of change. Things change from day to day or even hour to hour, especially like the first day of an expansion. Things are changing very, very quickly. So people who tend to do better in those more solved metas tend to struggle because of that. And then on that flip side, kind of the opposite, people who tend to do a little bit better in those fresh new metas, they kind of prey, I would say. They kind of prey on people because they're very good at like the recognizing, okay, I need to just play for tempo. I need to do this. Whereas they kind of can fall a little bit short sometimes. And these are generalities, of course. But, you know, it can seem like they can fall a little bit short sometimes when looking at very specific matchups or kind of those really nuanced plays. And they might really need to play even more games to really understand or get those nitty gritty plays much more than people who kind of already do well because they can recognize those patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the new meta too, like if you understand like everyone's going to be trying to play the greedy, slower things that aren't refined yet. And if you don't feel like you're good at that kind of meta, play aggro, because even if you don't have a refined aggro deck if your goal is to win games, you play aggro, you're going to run over the people trying to play Rycleaver. You're going to run over that. And then as it settles, then that may fade away. Like look at Pirate DH. Pirate DH was the deck first couple days. Now it's got like a 2% play rate. It's still okay, but people know how to deal with it now. And people like understand that now that I have these, okay, this is what I'm playing. I know that I have to make sure that they don't have these turns. They add control tools to make sure that they can survive the early game. No, they're not necessarily doing that early on when they're trying to make the fun things happen. So you can be that guy or gal or person and play aggro. Now, if you're playing new aggro, I think that's better than just playing the aggro deck from last expansion and just keep rolling with it. You also can't be judgmental about that either, because some people don't have a lot of money for cards and they just really like that deck. So, but yeah, aggro is definitely the way to go. If you are like apparently the four of us and like a staler meta, if you want to still succeed and not just drop down, play something aggressive early. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point that you bring up too, about playing like older decks. That sometimes people like us, right, who typically either like and or do better in those more stale metas, probably have put in a large number of games on a specific deck or on a couple of decks. So you're going to feel more comfortable with those decks too. Maybe not even that you like that deck, but you might just feel more comfortable with that deck. So it can already kind of start to feel like you're putting yourself into a more quote unquote solved meta if you solve half of it by playing something you already know. Right? And then saying, okay, now the other side is the part that I'm figuring out, but I already know how to play this deck, so I can stick with this same thing I've been playing.
And it's not just that you know how to play the deck, it's also you know how to respond to things with that deck, right? So like you know your plan, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, but now you know like, oh, I see this thing happening, so my reaction now is to, now that I'm seeing this happen, I know I need to go faster, or I need to hold something back so I have some burst, or whatever it might be. Just having that knowledge right there. Like during the first week of the expansion, I did not play Handbuff Paladin because I knew once I started playing Handbuff Paladin, I would probably not stop playing Handbuff Paladin because I love the deck, I love the play style, and I know it really well. So I forced myself to do other things, but it's hard. And I know a lot of people, like, you want to see the new things. I want to see new tools in the decks I like. I like finding new decks, but I also love playing the decks. I love playing the same decks over and over again.
Yeah. So I would also say that there's no absolutes, right? There's a lot of gray area. This is kind of like on a scale, right? The scenarios that I gave are very much like the opposite ends of the scale. And there's definitely going to be people and metas and decks and everything that are kind of in between all of those. That maybe some people can do okay in either kind of meta, but they might enjoy a certain meta more or the other, but they can play well or they play fine in either type. And I think a lot of the like pro players kind of fit into that, right? Where they're like, they're going to be good no matter what the meta is, but they tend to like a certain type of meta more than others, or certain decks more than others, just like everybody else. So I think with the kind of strengths and weaknesses that we have, then the next thing is how to give yourself a better chance in the meta that you feel like is your weakness. So if all of us feel like we play much better and we enjoy the more kind of stale, figured out metas, then how can we get better at the newer types of metas? I think one of those points is exactly what Tito was saying, where you just force yourself for a little bit, even give yourself a day, or depending on how often you play, give yourself a little bit of time to say, I'm just going to try some new stuff, try out some other decks, and then I can go back to like what I know and maybe play like meta decks if that's kind of your thing. But I'm just going to take some time and play some off meta stuff or play whatever is different and try to learn that for a little bit. I think even players who have been playing for a long time or who feel like they're good at the game can still learn stuff when they do that, because all these metas are so different. Decks, completely change the way that other decks might play, or even change the strength or weakness of certain decks, right? Like some decks are going to be better in certain metas because of the other decks that are around. They might be good in theory, but maybe they're not good because of the other decks that are in the meta. So, Ty, have you ever tried doing anything like that where you've tried just playing something completely wonky or different just to see how it would do?
Yeah, I actually, as you were talking, I was thinking about that, and being new to Hearthstone, I think we're in the 6th month now. Early on, one of the things I heard a lot was like, you should just jam one deck, learn the ins and outs. And I tried that for a little while, and I was miserable. And part of why I was miserable is I was losing to everything. And then I started experimenting and playing with just all the cards and figuring out, maybe these things don't quite go together, but let me try to make them go together anyway. And I learned very quickly that like part of getting better is really understanding what are the win conditions, what are the lines that folks can take. If I'm sitting on one side of the board and I know that this warrior across the table has forged a card on turn 2, and I know that typically warriors are playing either Bellowing Flames or Sanitize, and likely because I've flooded the board with a bunch of 1-drops that they want to clear the board immediately and not take a lot of damage, so therefore they're probably playing Bellowing Flames. I can then plan around that based on what I'm playing. The only way I would know that, though, is if I've lost to it enough times that I've learned, which I'm not necessarily the fastest learner that way. Let me tell you all the times that I prepped and then coined and went, okay, I'll concede now, it's fine. Or I pick up the deck and I study it and I play it and I figure out this is what works for this deck and this is what works in this scenario with this deck. I think that that's an invaluable lesson that I still struggle with, to be honest. There's a lot of times where like I beat myself up a little bit and I say, why am I only at 8,000 legend? I should be higher. I know I can play better. And I tell myself, it's because you're not jamming the same deck over and over. That's a huge misconception that I think a lot of people suffer from, is that, we have to put ourselves into a one deck scenario instead of really understanding how all of the cards function. And you only learn by doing, right? Like that's part of the...
But I also think people play differently, right? So, like for me, jamming one deck a lot of times is the play. If it's a deck I don't like, I don't do that, right? But if it's a deck I like, then that's the way I go. And it's you can still learn the matchups that you face them enough. And yeah, if you struggle against, say, like if you're running into Concierge Druid and you're like, oh, I don't understand how to beat this deck, even though I'm favored or whatnot, play the deck a bit, and then you'll figure out, oh, this is how I win, this is how I lose with the deck. But I think that the approach is, like, it's good to try a deck, and if you really want to play a deck, if you find a deck you like, stick with it, and you'll figure it out. If you aren't enjoying the deck and you're sticking with it, that's the wrong move, because one, you're not playing. Give it a little bit of time, give it like 10 games or maybe, and get a feel for the deck. Maybe you will like it if you play it or not. But if it's not your jam, it's not your jam. So trying to stick with the deck just to stick with it isn't the right move either, unless you like it. So it's games are supposed to be fun or something else. I think we can steal that phrase now that they don't do Hearthstone anymore. But yeah, yeah. I think like anytime we come up with something here on Bread and Butter, like our goal is to give you guys and gals and everybody out there ideas on how to be better at the game. Not everything we suggest is going to resonate with you. It might resonate with some people. It might not resonate. You ever read The Far Sides? You guys remember? Are you guys young enough to remember old enough to remember The Far Sides? There'd be a Far Side that you would read. It's like this one frame comic that has a joke, a little joke on it. There's a comic you will look at from The Far Side and you'd be like, that was stupid. And then you go to your friend's house to sit on their refrigerator because they thought it was the funniest thing ever. And it's the perspective that you bring to it that like makes it like there's one where it's got a rhinoceros in the guy's back. And the doctor is like, oh, wait a second. Maybe it's not kidney stones after all. Now, if you've never had kidney stones, that's probably not as funny. But if you're someone like me that's had kidney stones, it's like, yes, absolutely. So a lot of times we might give you some advice, and some of it should work for everybody. Like play slower. Playing slower will help for everybody. Is it easy for everybody? No, but that's something to do. But then stick with one deck for a long time might not be your thing unless you find the right one. So bit of a tangent there, but yeah, like the different approaches, you may not, you need to find your own approach, and that might mean trying different approaches to the game until you find the one that works for you.
Yeah, that's so true. And the thing with like jamming the same deck too, again, as you said, it might work for some people, might not work for others. Because also if you're not enjoying it, or if you're not going in with a focus of what you're trying to get out of the deck or trying to learn or improve on it, you're just playing, like if you're just jamming games with it over and over and over, like what do they call that? That's the definition of insanity, right? Like doing the same thing over and over and hoping for a different outcome. It's like you have to actually put in a little bit of effort to try to change the way you're playing the deck or do something different, or, learn interactions, as Ty was saying. All of that is going to help. And if I think just recognizing what kind of player you are and how you fit into certain types of metas, and then trying a different approach in the opposite meta, even if it's just for a short time. Like I said, say if you're someone who logs in twice a week, say, hey, for one of the times I log in, for my first 3 games, if I log in for an hour, my first just 3 games, I don't know, depending on how long the games are, my first 15 minutes of playing, whatever it is, however you're going to decide to, distinguish it, I'm going to try something completely different from how I usually play and just see how it works. Or I'm going to try a completely different deck than what I'm used to playing and just see how it goes. And then after that, you can be like, ooh, okay, I did that. I did that one game with a control priest or whatever it is. You're like, okay, that was enough. All right. Now back to what I usually play, or vice versa. If you're like a control player, okay, I'm going to play like 2 games of aggro and just really focus on these early turns because that's where aggro has the most decisions. And then go back to your control decks afterwards. Same thing with the metas. If you're used to or better at playing in those more slow solved metas, when it's new, say, all right, I'm just going to try to play something and I'm just going to see how I can think about this and approach to the big picture of Hearthstone, the Hearthstone basics. Go for tempo, win conditions, think about that kind of stuff instead of recognizing the patterns of the actual decks being played, like you do in the more solved metas. That's my advice.
All right. Well, thank you, Dawn. This has been a long, interesting episode, Doc. Kind of full, but I think we got room for dessert. What do you think?
Yeah, dessert sounds great. So, Ty, what is your favorite dessert?
Oh, that's a hard question. My favorite dessert is actually fairly simple. It's pumpkin pie. I love pumpkin pie. It's so good.
Oh, yes. So good.
But not the crust, just the filling.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the
crust
best
is
part.
like super hit or miss for me on every pie. But when there is a crust that's like really, really good, I could eat that all day long. But more often than not, I'm an anti-crust guy.
Did you just call yourself the Antichrust?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did.
Oh my gosh.
And you're a bread guy too, so.
Yep. So, listeners, if you enjoy the show, please leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. We prefer 5 stars, but because it helps with visibility. But give us an honest rating. Let us know how we're doing. We want this show to be the best it can be for us and the best it can be for you. And if you leave us a review or email the show, we'll read it out on the show. So, Dawn, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at DawnieDK. That's DAWNIEDK. You can find me on Twitch and YouTube, DragonRider TCCG. And then the 2 podcasts that I do each week, you can find me talking all things standard Hearthstone at the Dr. 3HS podcast, or talking all things just card games and a bunch of different digital and physical card games at the TCCG Roundtable.
And on the Dr. 3, if you've ever wanted to listen to Smarms from Lizlet, happy not just targeting her energy at Daniel and get him off course, and you want to hear what she actually has to say about like Hearthstone, Dr. 3 is a good place to do that.
And Ty, where can people find you?
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Tyleniphe, on Twitch at Tyleniphe the Sightless, or in all of your favorite streamers' chats, because I am loud, proud, and obnoxious 100% of the time.
Wonderful. Tito, how about yourself?
You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok at Tito Santana HS. If you've never subbed, and we always say these kind of things at the end, no one ever does. I'm planning on a lot more content. Come give me a follow. Give comments, all that good stuff. I would appreciate it because we're really going to be making an effort this time. And if you're here listening to me talk about Hearthstone week in and week out on 1, if not 2 podcasts, I'd appreciate it. That's all. Doc, how about yourself?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Twitch at Doc McButt. And Dawn, do you have any shout outs today?
Well, it just has to be said at this point. Shout out to you both for having me on again. I gotta plug that every time. But I'm gonna say shout out to Ty, shout out to Tito, shout out to everyone else on AFG, because as I mentioned earlier, I absolutely love running the team, and it's an amazing crew that we have over there, and it's sometimes one of the only things that I feel like I am excited for in a day, or that I enjoy doing in some parts of or some time frames. So thank you for always just being there and keeping me going.
And Ty.
Yeah, absolutely. So shout out to Reina, one of my closest friends, Livdera, and all the rest of my THL Pro Series teammates. We're an all-blind team. I know that they are interested in listening to this podcast in particular. But also shout out to all of those who've supported me along the way, both in streaming. Past Wednesday was 1 year of streaming. And shout out to Dawn for inviting me to be a part of AFG, and to Tito for inviting me to participate in this podcast today. Shout out to you too, Doc, for being entertaining. I appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Ty, please tell me the name of your THL team is the Blind Leading the Blind.
No, it's Lethally Blind this time around.
Heck yeah.
And we're We're out here for revenge, Tito. I'm gonna take out Pilot this time for sure.
Oh, did opportunistic pro players beat you last season? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think ultimately the undrafted Wizards won last season, but I did lose to Pilot 3-2. So hoping I can get some revenge.
Well, that's okay. If you weren't aware, I think I'm going to leapfrog him as the number 1 seed this week. So you'll have to probably be stuck with me now. Doc, you have any shout outs this week?
First and foremost, as always, I want to say thank you to our guests. So Don and Ty, thank you both so much. Don, it's always a pleasure to have you on every single time. It's fun to get to talk about like the educational side of card game theory, and I just really enjoy that kind of conversation. So thank you. And Ty, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you, getting to talk to you, and just getting to hear your perspective as someone who's pushing for accessibility in gaming and someone who I didn't realize was on an all blind team in THL. I just absolutely think that's incredible. So thank you both so much for coming on and talking. I enjoyed it a lot.
And I would like to say hi to Blister Guy, and also want to shout out Ben Heastone, who apparently thinks I say Ariana wrong. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to say it, but you are welcome to come on the show and correct me about anything I mispronounce. We would love to have you. And I know that we've had several people ask us, when is we going to get Ben Heastone on a podcast? And we'd love to be the first. So come on down, sir. Love to have you. And we'll talk everything Hearthstone and squirrels. Anyway, guys, I think we're toast. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, you can say bye.
Oh, bye.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.